In 2024, the Federal Reserve expanded its balance sheet to $7.4 trillion, while the dollar's purchasing power fell 98% since 1913. In 64 CE, Emperor Nero made the exact same decision, reducing the silver content of Rome's Denarius coin by 20% to fund imperial deficits. Within 250 years, Rome's currency became worthless scrap metal. This isn't speculation. This is 2,000 years of documented monetary history. Consider this pattern. When governments face unsustainable debt, they don't raise taxes or cut spending first. They debase the currency. They always have. From the silver denarius to the continental dollar to the modern Federal Reserve note, the mechanism changes, but the mathematics remains identical. And right now, America has entered phase 2 of a 3-phase debasement cycle that has destroyed every major empire in recorded history. Most people won't see this pattern until it appears in retrospective analysis, but the data exists today in plain sight if you know where to look. Let's begin in 18 CE, when the Roman Empire controlled territory from Britain to Mesopotamia, and the silver denarius contained 95% pure silver under Emperor Augustus. Rome's treasury was solvent, its currency trusted across 3 continents. But by 64 CE, Nero faced mounting military costs and palace construction debts. His solution? Reduce the denarius silver content to 78% while maintaining its legal tender status. The immediate effect? Rome's treasury gained breathing room. The hidden effect, merchants began hoarding older, purer coins, a phenomenon economists now call Gresham's Law. By 211 CE, under Caracalla, silver content fell to 43%. By 260 CE, it plummeted to 5%. According to historian Michael Grant in The Collapse and Recovery of the Roman Empire, prices in Egypt rose by 1,000% between 200 and 300 CE. The timeline is precise, 196 years from Nero's first debasement to complete monetary collapse. Rome didn't fall to barbarians first, it fell to arithmetic. Now, 14 centuries later, Habsburg Spain faced a similar crossroads. Between 1500 and 1650, Spain imported 181 tons of gold and 16,000 tons of silver from the Americas. Rather than building productive capacity, the Spanish crown used this influx to fund perpetual warfare. The result? According to economic historian Earl Hamilton's research, Spanish prices increased 300% between 1500 and 1600, while real wages collapsed by 40%. Spain's empire didn't collapse from military defeat, it collapsed when its currency lost credibility. And critically, Spain's debasement cycle accelerated. Collapse occurred in just 150 years versus Rome's 196. By the time Weimar Germany realized the pattern, it was 18 months too late. Following World War I reparations demands, Germany printed paper marks to pay debts. In January 1922, $1 exchanged for 191 marks. By November 1923, 4 trillion marks. The mathematics is chillingly precise. When money supply growth exceeds real economic output by more than 50% annually for 2 consecutive years, hyperinflation becomes mathematically inevitable. Germany crossed that threshold in mid-1922. Total currency collapse followed 14 months later. Notice the sequence? In each instance, 3 phases occurred with mathematical consistency. Phase 1, government debt exceeds 80% of annual revenue, triggering fiscal stress. Phase 2, currency debasement begins. Coin clipping, silver reduction, or money printing. Phase 3, velocity of money accelerates as public loses confidence, triggering collapse.
This isn't coincidence. This is economic certainty backed by 2,000 years of evidence. The pattern is mathematically consistent across 17 documented imperial collapses. Here's what's remarkable. The timeline compresses with each iteration. Rome's debasement cycle lasted 196 years, Spain's lasted 150, Weimar Germany's lasted 24 months. Why the acceleration? 3 factors: improved monetary technology, globalized trade networks, and instant information flow. The mathematics hasn't changed, but the velocity of collapse has. Consider Britain's parallel experience. Between 1797 and 1821, Britain suspended gold convertibility during the Napoleonic Wars, expanding paper money supply by 83%. Prices doubled. Only the 1819 Resumption Act restoring gold backing prevented total collapse. France experienced similar debasement under John Law's Mississippi Scheme in 1720. Paper money expanded 20-fold in 18 months before total collapse. The Ottoman Empire debased its Akçe silver coin by 96% between 1584 and 1650, triggering the Great Turkish Inflation. The pattern transcends culture, religion, and geography. It is purely mathematical.
According to Federal Reserve historian Allan Meltzer, every fiat currency in human history has eventually returned to its intrinsic value, 0. This isn't theory. This is 3,000 years of monetary history. So how does this connect to 2024? Let's examine the metrics with historical precision. Rome's Denarius debasement began when silver content fell below 90% purity. America's dollar debasement began in 1971 when Nixon severed the last gold convertibility link, reducing the dollar's backing from 25% gold reserves to 0%. Spain's collapse accelerated when money supply growth exceeded real GDP growth by 40% annually for 5 consecutive years. America crossed that threshold in 2020. M2 money supply grew 25%, while real GDP contracted 3.4%. Weimar's hyperinflation became irreversible when government debt exceeded 150% of annual tax revenue. America reached 162% in 2023. If we position America on the historical collapse timeline, we're currently at month 53 of a typical 72-month Phase 2 debasement cycle. The evidence is accumulating with mathematical precision. In the past 48 months alone, 4 events mirror Rome's mid-cycle debasement phase. First, the Federal Reserve's balance sheet expanded from $4.2 trillion in 1919 to $7.4 trillion in 2024, a 76% increase without corresponding productivity growth. Second, the dollar's purchasing power declined 18% between 2020 and 2024, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics CPI data. Third, real wage growth turned negative for 30 consecutive months, despite nominal wage increases, a precise parallel to Rome's Year of the Four Emperors period. Fourth, gold-to-dollar ratio reached an all-time high in 2024, signaling precisely what occurred during Rome's Caracalla debasement phase, public flight from fiat to hard assets. Remember Nero's initial 20% silver reduction? Most Romans didn't notice immediately. The collapse came gradually, then suddenly. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes with precision, and right now the rhyme scheme is becoming audible. History reveals 3 potential outcomes when empires reach this debasement inflection point. Path 1, monetary reformation. In 294 CE, Diocletian attempted currency reform by introducing the Argentius coin with restored silver content. It failed because underlying fiscal imbalances remained unaddressed. Only Augustus's earlier reforms succeeded because they paired currency restoration with 30% spending cuts. Probability today, less than 10%. The political will for genuine fiscal restraint remains absent. Path 2, managed devaluation.
Britain followed this path after 1931, accepting gradual pound sterling depreciation while maintaining functional governance. Living standards declined 15 to 20% over 2 decades, but societal collapse was avoided. This represents the most probable outcome, 70% probability based on 28 historical precedents. The mathematics suggests a 30 to 40% purchasing power decline over the next 15 years if current trajectories continue. Path 3, currency replacement. Weimar Germany, Zimbabwe, and Yugoslavia all reached this terminal phase, where the existing currency becomes functionally worthless and requires replacement. Probability 20%. Trigger threshold when annual inflation exceeds 50% for 2 consecutive quarters, while government debt service consumes over 40% of tax revenue. We are not there yet, but the trajectory is mathematically calculable. Most observers won't recognize this pattern until Phase 3 becomes irreversible, but you're not most observers. You now understand what 94% of people will miss until it's documented in future history books. If we understand the historical precedent, the next phase becomes predictable, not in days or weeks, but in years, and that time frame matters profoundly. This isn't fear-mongering, it's pattern recognition. The Roman senator who hoarded pre-Neronian denarii in 65 CE didn't panic, he prepared. The Hamburg merchant who converted marks to gold in early 1922 didn't speculate, he calculated. They understood a simple truth: currencies are promises backed by mathematics. When the math breaks, the promise dissolves. If you want to understand these patterns before they unfold in real time, subscribe. New historical analysis every Thursday examining the financial cycles shaping our future. Next video, the 1933 Gold Confiscation Executive Order and why the legal framework for modern asset seizures already exists in Title 12, Section 95A of the United States Code. History doesn't repeat, but for those who study its mathematics, it rhymes with devastating precision.